Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in the light of the tragedy, I wish at this point we could be taking some time to doing other work other than to be asking questions in question period. But we do need to carry on with the work that we have been elected to do in this chamber. And this past weekend's event, especially for the Filipino community, have set some serious questions that need to be asked. Interim Police Chief Stephen Rye has called this the darkest day in cities of Vancouver's history, and it may well be the darkest day in British Columbia's history. But despite this darkest time, we saw the best in humanity shine through the actions of first responders and of bystanders who rushed in, doing everything they can to help, and certainly in the healthcare workers around the province and the healthcare workers in the Lower Mainland who responded to the Code Orange, who continue to give the care. I want to say thank you to all of them. But even as we grieve, we need to fulfill our duty as members of the legislature to ask the difficult questions so that we can ensure that these events will not be repeated. So, as a first question to the Premier, does the Premier recognize the current system is not providing the level of care that people with severe mental illness need, that is putting British Columbians at risk?
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. And I recognize this is not the ideal moment for question period, but I appreciate the critical role of the opposition and the need for question period. And I thank the member for recognizing that in his question. I just don't want the community to think that this is somehow improper. In fact, this is how the legislature will get through this. The question the member asks is an important one. We know that mental health services are critical for people in community. For the specific incident, I won't speculate. Vancouver Coastal Health has released some information indicate this man was being tracked by a care team. He was compliant with his medications. There was not an indication of violence. Leads to a whole array of further questions for British Columbians, for me, I'm sure for the opposition as well. Because there's a current police investigation, 100 police officers right now investigating this, ensuring that the evidence is there to convict this man for the heinous crime that he committed against our community. We're limited in what we can release without compromising that investigation. Police will release information as they can. We want them to do that, encourage them to do that, but not at the expense of getting a conviction. In terms of the mental health system generally in the province, we know the province needs urgent expansion of mental health supports. We just recently opened some beds for people struggling with mental health addiction and brain injury at Surrey Pretrial. We're opening more in Maple Ridge, a different group of people. We have 2,000 beds in the province that are available for doctors and nurses to use the Mental Health Act to hold people involuntarily. And those services are available. People should go to hospital. They should ask for assistance. But we know that we need more. We're adding 140 more beds at new hospital builds across the province. We're going to keep doing that work, Honourable Speaker, because it is a priority.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
I know we all share in the grief of the incident, as people around the world do. But the serious questions about the tragedy, and unfortunately far too many other incidents around the province, caused by individuals with significant police contacts and related to mental health disorders, has shown an unacceptable pattern in British Columbia, where people with serious mental illness disorders are deteriorating in communities without proper care, without support. So, Mr. Speaker, I would ask the Premier to put forward how is it that we can break this pattern? What is it that we need to be doing as a province to fix the system that is clearly not meeting the needs and quite frankly is broken, so that we can ensure these people are receiving the care that they need, and we can assure the families in British Columbia the safety and ability to be able to celebrate without fear of these issues happening in the future.
Premier,
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, again for this incident. I'm going to refrain from speculating about the contact this individual had with the system and how the system responded or did not respond to the needs that he had. It's an individual that made a decision to drive a vehicle into a crowd of people, killing elders and children. He should be prosecuted and convicted. So there are two aspects to this. One is the healthcare system, the criminal justice system. On the criminal justice side, we're training more police officers to ensure that police are available to support community events and communities across the province. We're tracking repeat violent offenders, 400 in the province, to ensure that courts have all the information they need when people are arrested to detain and hold these individuals, and to intervene with supports if, for example, mental health interventions will help interrupt that cycle of offending. We're opening mental health beds literally in prisons so that individuals who are in our remand center in Surrey, for example, are able to get mandatory involuntary care while in custody to ensure they're not released back to the community untreated. We're opening additional beds for people who aren't in contact with the criminal justice system at Maple Ridge, and we will be at other sites across the province. I know that there are lots of people struggling in our community, very visibly in communities, particularly in downtown cores. There have been incidents of repeat violent offenders in our community. I can tell British Columbians that those numbers are coming down thanks to these programs, and we're going to continue to expand them to ensure that people are safe. For the horrific attack that took place in Vancouver, we'll look to the criminal justice system to provide information, police, about what they find in terms of this individual's activities before the attacks, how the system responded or didn't. And if those answers don't come through the criminal justice system, we will not hesitate to call a public inquiry to get the answers that British Columbians deserve.
Member for Surrey Cloverdale.
Mr. Speaker, I stood with the Premier and MLAs on both sides of this House to celebrate the community, the Filipino community at the Lapu-Lapu Festival, and I stood beside them again at the vigil in Kensington Park. And I'm still standing in solidarity to support the victims and their families and British Columbians. But we also must stand here in this chamber today because British Columbians deserve answers. And as our leader, the leader of the opposition, as he said, this is not the first time we have seen this pattern. It's been reported that the man accused of murdering festival attendees had well over 50 police contacts. He had numerous healthcare contacts related to mental illness. According to media reports, just hours before the attack, a family member had contacted the psychiatric ward at the hospital because the man had a deteriorating mental health condition. He had police contact just the day before. Despite the fact that the man had a care team, we know the result. The system failed, and people were killed. To the Premier, how many times does someone in this province have to interact with police? How many times do they have to interact with the healthcare system before effective supports are in place to keep the public and seriously mentally ill people safe?
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I won't speculate about this particular incident. Police are investigating. I expect that we will hear answers from police and from the criminal justice system about aspects of what the member is asking. And I encourage them to share whatever information they can as soon as they can. But we won't compromise the possibility of prosecution and conviction at this stage. I also want to say, this man made a decision. He decided to drive a vehicle into a crowd of people, killing children, killing seniors. He should be criminally tried and convicted. For the healthcare system, the members of former police officers shall know. Without knowing the specifics of this case, conduct needs to rise to a level before we can take action to detain someone to force them into care or arrest them. The information we have currently from Vancouver Coastal Health is that up to this horrific murder, the person was compliant with medication and had no indication of violence. It raises all kinds of questions that the member rightly asks. I don't have the answers. Police are investigating that exact question right now. But I would urge British Columbians to let the police do their work, to provide us with the answers in the court system, to provide us with the answers. And if those systems are not able to do so, the earliest opportunity that we can do so without compromising the police investigation or prosecution, we will call a full public inquiry.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The court's role is to look at evidence that the police will collect, and they will determine whether or not the accused murderer is guilty or innocent or not guilty as a result of a mental illness. But it is not the role of the court to do a deep dive on our mental health care system, where there is clearly gaps in helping British Columbians. British Columbians who are shaken, Mr. Speaker, by the tragic events of this past weekend. And Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding that further investigation may be underway, the facts already show a clear and devastating pattern in British Columbia. People with mental illness, with dozens of police interactions, repeated contacts with the healthcare system, and countless missed opportunities, Mr. Speaker, to ensure effective support was in place. He had services, but they failed. How many incidents does the government think it should take before a person is effectively supported? 10 interactions? 20? Is it 30? We know that there were more than 50, perhaps even as many as 100 documented interactions with authorities. A final plea for help within hours of this tragedy that left 11 people dead, still more in the hospital. My question, Mr. Speaker, is how was this allowed to happen?
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I won't join the member in speculating. I won't join the member in saying that the people that were tracking this individual, that were monitoring him, or the police that interacted with him, in judging any of the decisions they made. We don't know what happened, Honourable Speaker. The investigation is underway. If there were failings in the system, we will address them. If this was an individual who made a decision to run down a bunch of people, then he will be prosecuted and convicted and held for the rest of his life, which in my opinion is exactly what needs to happen. Now, Honourable Speaker, my commitment to the member and to all British Columbians is that I agree with her. I agree the criminal justice system is not set up to deep dive into our healthcare system. If we do not get the answers from the criminal justice system that British Columbians are rightly looking for, then we will call a full public inquiry at the earliest opportunity to do so without compromising that criminal trial.
House Leader of the Third Party.
Mr. Speaker, I also wish to acknowledge the earlier statements, heartfelt statements regarding the Lapu Lapu Festival tragedy. I also wish to acknowledge that we are proceeding with question period in difficult circumstances. And in asking questions, we mean no disrespect to the horrific events in the earlier statements. Mr. Speaker, last night we saw Canadian democracy in action, a system very familiar to British Columbia. We saw a winner-take-all, first-past-the-post counting system, which locks us further into an adversarial status quo, where collaboration is the exception rather than the rule, where people vote based on fear of the worst possible outcome rather than in support of a vision of the future they would like to see, where parties work for their own electoral interests rather than collaborating for the best interests of the public. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, how will you modernize the voting system in British Columbia to adequately honour each person who makes the effort to vote.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for the question. Our democracy is very important. It's important that we have a strong democracy, and I think what we saw last night was a demonstration of many Canadians participating in that democracy. Every time we have a democratic process in BC, the electoral officer reviews that. And I know there's a select standing committee that will be in place that will involve all members of this House that will review that election. And as Attorney General, if there are changes that need to be made under the Electoral Act to modernize our democracy, I'll certainly do so. Thank you.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the answer to the first question. Across Canada and across British Columbia, people are feeling disconnected from institutions, from decision-making, from each other. We hear that people don't see their decision-making reflected, their voices don't matter, and their votes don't count. Trust in our institutions, including our democracy, are the cornerstone of our system of government. Our education, health, and housing systems suffer when they don't reflect the will of the people. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, how will you ensure that people feel connected and listened to by this House?
Attorney General.
Again, I share the member's sentiment that it is important that we have an engaged public that understands what the work that we're doing here and how important our democratic institutions are. That's the work of all of us. I think the proper place for understanding changes is not the government to direct it, but for all parties, the Select Standing Committee to understand how we can make our democracy strong and continue to do so. I'm glad that we're having a Select Standing Committee to do just that work. I'll be receiving a report from the Chief Electoral Officer at some point about the last election, and we will continue to do the work of making sure that everybody's involved, that we have high voter turnout, that people are engaged with this important project of democracy. Thank you.
Member for Prince George Mackenzie.
Mr. Speaker, the head of the University Hospital of Northern British Columbia's psychiatric ward, backed by 23 community agencies, has been advocating for mental health and addiction support for patients. They've launched a petition to bring a psychiatric hospital to Northern BC. There are very few short-term acute psychiatric care beds available in Prince George, Terrace, and Dawson Creek, only 45 of those in total. But if anyone in the region requires a greater level of safe and secure forensic care, there are no beds at all in Northern Health. These patients need to somehow be transported to one of only 3 beds in Kamloops. The head of psychiatry at UHNBC has said, and I quote, "We are releasing dangerous patients from the hospital before they are ready to go because we have to. There is nowhere else to send them," end quote. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Health, when will this government bring proper psychiatric care to Northern Health?
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Dr. Daniel Vigo, as Special Advisor to the province, has been meeting with mental health specialists from the hospital, has been working with Chief Darlene Logan, and is making very good progress in identifying solutions for additional mental health services in the north. Let me say this. The province has historically centralized intensive mental health services, for example, at Colony Farms, at Riverview, and transported patients across the province. Our goal is to bring these services to the regions in the province so that people can get care closer to home, closer to family and support networks who are key to their success on release. And we'll continue that work. We're very active in the members' region in advancing that.
House Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right now, a 28-year-old man living in Victoria with schizophrenia is supported by community housing. His family's been discouraged from seeing him, and because he's an adult, they have no authority to intervene. One of his parents told us, after what happened on this past weekend, that the attacker could have been their son. This man recently attempted to slit his own throat with a machete. His main supports are meeting with a support worker once a week for coffee and a donut. My question, through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, are these sufficient supports for someone battling serious mental illness? When can we expect increased supports that are immediate before someone becomes a danger and needs to be incarcerated and put into one of these emergency beds?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you so much to the member for the question. I want to begin by commenting just how important it is that we're having this conversation here today in the House. Despite the fact that this is question period, this is a very important time for us to take in the events of this weekend, to really hold people and all people who are impacted by the actions of others in situations like these close in our heart, and to thank all of the first responders, the healthcare workers, mental health counselors, everybody who is active in this weekend's incident and continue to support people. Mr. Speaker, the member rightly raises concerns for those people who are actively living with mental health issues and with serious illnesses, and the work that we have to continue to do to support them in providing and working with them, not only to have the appropriate supports, but to provide appropriate housing. And Mr. Speaker, that's why our government maintains a commitment to building out complex care housing for people who need those kinds of active supports. Mr. Speaker, that's why our budget this year adds more resources, and as has been spoken about in this House, not just in urban areas like Victoria or the Lower Mainland, but these supports are actively needed in more rural and remote areas of the province. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to do that work. I think what we're hearing today in the House is that all parties are deeply committed to this, and that we'll continue to work together to ask the difficult questions of each other and to use what we learn in time and immediately from incidents that have taken place around British Columbia to strengthen and bolster the mental health care system for all British Columbians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Abbotsford West.
Yes, another difficult question. A tourist visiting from Toronto, Stephanie, came to Vancouver to see the sights, to visit Stanley Park, experience everything that British Columbia has to offer. Instead, she was viciously attacked on the Vancouver seawall. She was left beaten, with a black eye, and more importantly, terrified for her life. But prior to the incident, the attacker's family had pleaded for him to get mental health help. Mr. Nangu's family told the media they called the police because he was having a mental health crisis, that he was off his medication, and that he needed help. So, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, why didn't Peter Hans Nangu receive the mental health assessment that could have prevented this brutal attack on Stephanie?
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My understanding is that when the family called police, this individual was in fact arrested. This is a matter that is in front of the court, and again, we'll continue to monitor. Deeply disturbing to British Columbians. Visitors who come to British Columbia to feel welcome and safe, but all British Columbians to feel safe. We'll continue to monitor this file, but I'm sure as well on this one, we will see information come out through the criminal justice system.
Member for Prince George North Caribou.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back in September 2024, a deeply disturbed mentally ill man with a history of over 60 police interactions brutally attacked two innocent people in downtown Vancouver, killing one man, cutting off his head, and severing another's hand. Despite prior convictions and probation for assault and assault causing bodily harm, there were no effective interventions to prevent this mentally ill-related catastrophic outcome. Only after this horrifying attack did the Premier announce 9 beds to be installed for the pre-trial centre. Now, these beds, Mr. Speaker, are only for those who have become entangled in the justice system. And this is after something bad happens. Mr. Speaker, true to the Premier, what will the Premier do to prevent these violent attacks from happening in the first place?
Premier?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We've been working with, members' timeline's not correct, but we've been working with Dr. Daniel Vigo to ensure that we have a couple critical pieces in place. One is the intervention services and community, the ACT teams. These are assertive community care teams that provide care to people who are struggling in community, and particularly those that are identified by police or community service organizations as being a particular risk, either to themselves or to other people. But also, we know that many of these individuals are ending up being arrested in our criminal justice system. So we need to do both things at the same time, and we are. In this budget, we're expanding those ACT teams. We're expanding the care. It started with the Surrey pretrial beds that the member said, which are indeed targeted to people who are in the pretrial system. But in the coming weeks, we'll announce additional beds at Alouette, Maple Ridge, where people are in community, not necessarily involved in the criminal justice system. And that was just the beginning, Honourable Speaker. We're going to continue opening beds across the province. People are struggling particularly with mental health issues, addiction issues, and brain injury all at the same time. Thank you.
Member for Prince George Wilmot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On October 18th, 2022, Constable Shailene Yang was killed in the line of duty while trying to help Burnaby Park staff check on a man living in Broadview Park. The accused, who stabbed Constable Yang, had been living in the park for months and was facing assault charges from an incident that occurred 7 months before he killed Constable Yang. He had also been charged with assault and willfully obstructing a peace officer in February 2021, 2 police interactions in the year before he killed a police officer 6 months later. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, these tragic and preventable incidents continue to occur. Why has it taken this government so long to just begin to address this historic problem?
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I was at the constable's funeral. It was a moving event, a horrific death, and the whole community mourned. Police officers put themselves at risk at every call that they attend. You know, thinking about first responders, particularly this weekend, again, putting themselves at risk for all of us. The member is correct to recall that the tragedy was devastating for the province. It is one of a series of attacks on police officers nationally, a profound concern. This is a national issue that we are grappling with. And in particular, this incident led to significant changes around peer-assisted teams in community, around active community outreach and treatment program expansion to prevent these kinds of incidents. We've got to keep doing this work. We will keep doing this work, Honourable Speaker, and I've outlined much of it that's underway across the province right now.
Member for Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is on Saturday, people left their homes to take part in a joyous occasion, and 11 of those people aren't coming home. The reality is that Constable Yang went to work to protect her community, and she didn't come home. The reality is that we have not updated our Mental Health Act in any substantial way since 1996. And right now, the reality is, it's not just the province watching what this Premier does next. It's not just Canada watching what this Premier does next. The world is now watching what we do next. And I can tell you this, in every community, whether it's mine or any other member of this House, in all honesty, we are not doing enough to keep our streets and our people safe. And that has unfortunately been proven out time and again. My question to the Premier is a direct one. when will he take the necessary action that we can accomplish in this House to make sure that people can be taken off of our streets and given the care they need before these tragic incidents occur again?
Premier?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In relation to the horrific mass murder that took place over the weekend, our government has announced we'll establish an independent commission to move quickly to review best practice from other jurisdictions, because we know there are other community organizations that are planning on holding events this summer that are asking, should we hold our event? Can we do it safely? We want to make sure they have all the information they need to both ensure the event is as safe as possible and so that British Columbians are able to continue celebrating. In terms of this specific incident, I won't join the member in his conclusions that he's drawing already about what happened. Police are investigating that. What we know is that a man made a decision to drive a vehicle into a crowd of people. He killed innocent people, 11, and potentially more as people struggle for their lives in a hospital right now. He is rightly charged with murder. He's facing a criminal trial. I hope he's convicted. I hope he spends the rest of his life behind bars. As for the system as a whole, British Columbians rightly have questions, as is the opposition. And we'll ensure that at our earliest opportunity, if we don't have those answers, we'll call a full public inquiry so we can get those answers. But it's important for the member to know, and it's important for British Columbians to know, that when we look at communities across the province, we are seeing crime rates come down. These programs intervening with repeat violent offenders, with people struggling with mental health issues, with criminality generally, are driving down crime rates in the province. And it's not enough. We've got to do more. In Vancouver, a 6% drop in overall crime, down 18% over 2016. In Kelowna, decreased the second year in a row, down 17% over the high water mark in 2022. In Kamloops, a 14% drop over the previous year. The numbers are lower than 2020 and 2021. This isn't enough. We've got to do more. But it shows that these programs, the work that we're doing with police, prosecutors, Crown Council, social workers, mental health services, are working, and we'll continue to do that work, Honourable Speaker.
The bell ends the question period.